Daniel had always known humans were outsiders in the galaxy. On Earth, he had been an ordinary engineer, but here, aboard the Velari Empire's flagship, he was a consultant, a human among an advanced alien civilization that judged every move with cold intelligence. Even so, he had earned respect in ways he never thought possible. He could fix things no one else could, solve problems too complex for Velari minds steeped in centuries of protocol. And yet, there was one presence he could never fully face: Princess Lyran, the Queen's daughter. The princess was unlike anyone he had met. Tall, graceful, with violet skin that shimmered under the ship's lights, she carried herself with authority and warmth that made others both admire and fear her. Humans were small in comparison, but Daniel found her gaze impossible to ignore. When she spoke, even the most seasoned officers stammered. When she smiled, even the coldest scientist felt exposed. And Daniel, he avoided her. Always, it was not because he disliked her. He respected her more than anyone he had ever met, but he feared the consequences of closeness. To him, she was the future ruler of an empire, a being whose life was weighed in duty and expectation. One misstep, one careless word could ruin everything. And beyond that, there was a personal fear he could not yet admit. He feared attachment, the kind that left scars when lost. Humans were prone to it, and Daniel had learned that lesson the hard way. So he kept his distance. But the universe did not allow distance forever. It started with small things. Princess Lyran had begun lingering near the labs where Daniel worked, asking questions about Earth, about humans, about his life before the Empire. Daniel answered politely, but always in short phrases, keeping the conversation strictly professional. "You're very precise," she said one morning as he adjusted a quantum stabilizer. "Earth humans have a reputation for unpredictability, yet you—" She trailed off, watching him work with the same calm patience he used when solving impossible engineering problems. Daniel looked up, careful to keep his expression neutral. "I'm just trained to find solutions, Princess. Unpredictability is usually a problem." Her lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. "Yet you seem careful even with me. Are humans always this cautious?" He shook his head. "I'm cautious with everyone, especially those in command. Mistakes can be expensive." She studied him, violet eyes sharp but curious. For a moment, Daniel felt the weight of her gaze, as if she could see the corners of his mind he kept hidden from everyone else. He shifted, pretending to check the calibration on a sensor, though his hands trembled slightly. From a distance, the Queen observed these interactions. Queen Elira was patient, wise, and rarely surprised, but she noticed Daniel's avoidance of her daughter. He did not glance at her when she entered the lab. He did not offer to explain complex equipment. He politely evaded every attempt at conversation, even when Lyran tried to involve him in fleet-wide strategy meetings. The Queen finally decided it was time to intervene. She sent a summons to Daniel, requesting a private audience aboard her personal deck. Daniel's first reaction was unease. He had met with rulers before, yes, but none like her. The Velari Queen's presence was magnetic, commanding without force. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Yet when she spoke, her words carried the weight of thousands of years of accumulated knowledge. When Daniel arrived, she was already waiting, seated on a throne-like chair that seemed grown rather than built, its organic curves echoing her authority. The deck was empty except for them, the soft hum of the ship the only background sound. "Daniel," she began, her tone even, "you avoid my daughter." Daniel swallowed. He had anticipated the conversation, but hearing it aloud caused a tension he could not dispel. "Princess Lyran is important. She carries responsibilities that I do not fully understand." "I do not wish to interfere." The Queen's gaze sharpened. "Is that your only reason?" He hesitated. A human's honesty was often admired, but here honesty could be dangerous. I respect her too much to risk complicating her duties," he admitted carefully, testing the Queen's reaction. Elira's expression softened slightly. "Complicating her duties or yourself?" Daniel paused, realizing she understood more than he expected. "Both, Your Majesty," he said quietly. The Queen leaned back, thoughtful. "Humans are strange. They fear the harm they might bring, even when they cause none. But do you truly understand the princess's position? She is not just a figurehead. She wields influence that could shape entire worlds, and yet you let fear decide your actions." Daniel faltered. He wanted to explain, but words felt clumsy. How could he convey that attachment was dangerous, that he had seen what loss could do, and that he could not bear to risk hurting someone like Lyran. Instead, he simply nodded, unsure if his silence was worse than lying. The queen studied him for several long moments. Finally, she leaned forward. I do not wish to coerce you, human, but understand this. Avoiding her does not protect you. Sometimes restraint becomes its own trap. Daniel swallowed again, feeling a strange mix of fear and relief. The queen had not scolded him. She had warned him, yes, but there was also an acknowledgement that humans acted differently, that their emotions could be both a strength and a vulnerability. Before he could respond, the deck doors opened. Princess Lyran stepped inside, unaware of the conversation that had just taken place. She moved with her usual grace, violet eyes focused, yet there was a hint of curiosity in her gaze. Father, she said respectfully, though she did not glance at the queen, I wanted to discuss the anomaly near Sector 7. The sensors indicate a fluctuation in the warp field. The queen raised a hand, stopping her. Not now, Lyran, this is a private matter. The princess blinked, a flicker of confusion crossing her features. She turned to Daniel, perhaps expecting to find some explanation in his face, but he remained cautious, neutral, polite. Lyran inclined her head slightly. Very well. I shall return later. She paused, and for a moment their eyes met. Daniel felt a jolt, an unspoken understanding that she noticed his distance, that she wondered why he remained so guarded. Then, with a nod, she left. The queen turned back to him. See, she said softly. Your avoidance is noticed, human, even by those you wish to protect. Daniel remained silent. Words failed him again. He had always thought distance was safety. Now he realized that sometimes distance was visible, and visible actions carried consequences of their own. The next days were tense. The anomaly near Sector 7 grew more erratic. Ships reported minor systems failures, and the Velari fleet grew anxious. Daniel threw himself into analyzing the situation, spending long hours in the labs, mapping every fluctuation, testing every possible solution. Princess Lyran, refusing to be ignored, continued to observe, offering ideas and insights. Daniel listened politely but maintained his distance, though he noticed she was careful not to press too far. During a late-night session, Daniel finally spoke to her directly. Princess, I appreciate your input, but some of these systems are delicate. Errors could be dangerous. She studied him, eyes searching his. Do you avoid me because you think I am careless? She asked quietly. He shook his head. No, I avoid because I respect you, and because I fear the consequences if I do not. She blinked. Fear. That is a strange reason, human. Fear of me? Daniel hesitated, then nodded. Not of you, of the impact I could have on you, on your life. Lyran's expression softened slightly. She was used to people fearing her power, but Daniel's words carried something different. Humility, care, a restraint that was rare in anyone she met. It intrigued her, though she did not fully understand it yet. By the end of the week, the anomaly had intensified. Small rips in space-time appeared near colonies. Ships reported sudden bursts of energy that caused minor damage. Daniel's calculations indicated a growing instability that threatened an entire sector. Princess Lyran approached him again, this time determined. We must work together, Daniel. Your calculations are precise, but alone you cannot control this. We need cooperation. He looked at her, sensing both the command in her voice and the trust she was extending. Despite his fear, he realized she was offering an opportunity, not a demand. He nodded. Very well, we shall work together, Princess, but understand I cannot guarantee safety for either of us. The anomaly is unpredictable. Lyran smiled faintly. Neither am I human. But together, perhaps we stand a chance. And so, the first part of the story closes with the human and the princess entering a tentative partnership. Daniel's avoidance is challenged, his respect for her grows, and the stakes of the anomaly loom large. Trust begins to form, even as fear lingers, setting the stage for the dangerous journey ahead. The anomaly was growing faster than Daniel had anticipated. Every calculation, every model he ran seemed to understate its instability. The energy readings fluctuated wildly, tearing at the fabric of space near colonies in the sector. Even the most advanced Velari sensors could not predict its path. And yet, Daniel believed he had a chance. Human intuition, he reminded himself, sometimes revealed patterns that algorithms could not. Princess Lyran was determined to be involved. She insisted on observing his work directly, leaning over data screens, asking questions, pointing out patterns the aliens, machines had ignored. Daniel was grateful, yet still cautious. He maintained his distance, careful not to reveal too much, careful not to allow closeness. "Daniel, the readings are inconsistent," Lyran said one morning, her violet eyes sharp against the glow of the control panel. "The energy bursts are not random. Look here, see how the spikes correlate with the rotation of nearby planets." Daniel leaned over, adjusting a sensor. "Yes, I see it, but this is complex. If one variable shifts unexpectedly, it could cascade." Lyran frowned. "I understand the risk, but if we do not act, these colonies will be destroyed. You cannot solve this alone." He straightened, meeting her gaze. "I know. But even with cooperation, some of it is unpredictable. We may not survive the first test." Lyran did not flinch. "Then we will take that risk." It was a statement, not a challenge. Daniel felt a strange respect for her resolve. In that moment, he realized that her position as princess, as future ruler, did not make her invincible. It made her human in ways he could understand. They worked together for hours, recalibrating sensors, running simulations, testing devices that could stabilize the anomaly temporarily. Daniel found himself explaining details he normally would have withheld. Lyran listened attentively, never questioning his methods, only offering insight when necessary. Slowly, trust began to replace his habitual caution. Late in the day, the Queen summoned Daniel again. He entered her private deck with measured steps, careful not to show the fatigue he felt from continuous calculations. Elira studied him silently for a moment, then spoke. "You have changed," she said softly. "You work more closely with my daughter now, yet I sense hesitation." "Why do you hold back?" Daniel hesitated. He had expected her to question his methods or his calculations, but not his motives. "Your Majesty," he began carefully, "I respect Princess Lyran too much to risk complications. If I grow close or if mistakes occur, it could affect her duties. It could affect her life. That is why I am cautious." The Queen nodded slowly. "You think distance protects her, but sometimes distance creates misunderstandings. She may interpret your avoidance as disrespect. Fear of harm does not always prevent harm, it can create it." "I understand," Daniel said quietly, "but I cannot ignore the risk, not for her." "You underestimate humans," the Queen said. "Your empathy, your restraint, it is unusual among your kind. It can be a strength." Daniel glanced down, unsure what to say. Words felt inadequate. He had learned long ago that explaining emotions rarely changed outcomes. The Queen seemed to understand anyway, nodding once before dismissing him. When he returned to the lab, Lyran was waiting. "I saw the Queen," she said softly, not questioning, only observing. "I assume it went well." Daniel smiled faintly, though fatigue weighed heavily on him. "In her own way, yes. She understands my caution, though I doubt it changes much for you." Lyran tilted her head, curiosity and amusement blending in her expression. "Perhaps it changes more than you think. Sometimes humans are harder to read than aliens." He laughed quietly, a sound rare for him in such intense circumstances. "You are correct, Princess. Perhaps that is the only advantage we have over the rest of the galaxy." Their moment of levity was brief. Alarms blared across the ship as a new surge from the anomaly struck the nearby colony. Lights flickered, and sensors reported massive energy fluctuations. Daniel and Lyran rushed to the command console, coordinating emergency measures with the fleet. "Daniel, the field is unstable," Lyran said. "If it collapses here, the ripple will destroy multiple systems." He ran simulations rapidly, voice calm despite the danger. "We need to channel the excess energy into the stabilizers, but timing must be precise. I will need your assistance for the manual adjustments." She nodded without hesitation. "Tell me what to do." Together, they worked in tense silence, fingers flying across holographic controls, adjusting stabilizers, redirecting energy bursts. The anomaly pulsed unpredictably, tearing at the edges of space, threatening to engulf their instruments. Yet in the midst of chaos, Daniel realized something. He had never felt more in control than when he trusted her. Hours passed. The energy readings began to stabilize, though the anomaly remained unpredictable. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow, glancing at Lyran. She was calm, focused, yet he noticed the tension in her shoulders, the rapid calculation in her eyes. She had risked herself alongside him, never flinching. "Princess, you handled that well," he said quietly. "Most would have panicked." She gave him a faint smile. "I have you to guide me, human. Your fear is practical. It keeps us alive. I only need to follow." He hesitated, then nodded, realizing she understood his boundaries, and that her respect for him was genuine, not enforced by authority or duty. That evening, after the immediate danger passed, the Queen requested another meeting. Daniel entered her deck once more, weary but alert. Elira observed him silently before speaking. "You are forming a bond with my daughter," she said, "yet I sense hesitation." "Tell me, why do you hold back?" Daniel took a deep breath. I fear attachment," he admitted. "I have lost people before because I did not respect the boundaries of danger and emotion. I cannot risk that happening again, not to someone like Lyran. I avoid her to protect her." The Queen's violet eyes widened slightly. She studied him carefully. "And yet you do not avoid action. You risk yourself daily to protect others. Your restraint is not weakness, it is strength. You understand consequences better than most." Daniel swallowed. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only hope she sees the same." "Perhaps she already does," the Queen said softly, turning her gaze toward a viewport, watching distant stars. "Humans are strange. They fear what they value most, yet they endure it anyway." As Daniel returned to the lab, he found Lyran waiting outside. "You were gone a long time," she said, violet eyes curious. "Did you finally tell her?" "I did," he admitted. "She understands, but that does not change my caution. I still cannot let closeness interfere with your duties." Lyran stepped closer, just outside his comfort zone, and spoke quietly. "I do not need you to risk yourself for me unnecessarily. I need your guidance, your intelligence, your respect. That is enough." Daniel nodded, feeling a weight lift slightly. She did not demand affection. She did not demand loyalty. She only demanded trust and understanding, things he could give without fear. Days passed, and their collaboration strengthened. Daniel found himself explaining more, teaching her human logic, letting her see why he made the decisions he did. Lyran listened attentively, questioning, probing, yet always careful. She learned quickly, adapting her alien knowledge to complement his human intuition. Then one day, the anomaly shifted violently. A surge of energy threatened to tear apart the fleet. Daniel and Lyran rushed to the command console, coordinating with every ship nearby. The calculations were complex, impossible for one person alone. This was no longer a simulation. Failure could mean disaster for hundreds of thousands of lives. "Daniel, it's too unstable," Lyran shouted over the alarms. "Even your models are failing," he focused, adjusting variables, estimating probabilities. "I know, Princess. But we have one chance, trust me." For hours, they worked together, every adjustment precise, every calculation tense. Daniel guided the stabilizers, while Lyran manually synchronized energy channels, her violet skin glowing faintly under the holographic lights. They were a team, their skills merging in perfect balance of intuition and logic, experience and learning, human and alien. Finally, after what felt like eternity, the anomaly began to stabilize. Energy readings returned to normal ranges, the rifts in spacetime closing slowly. The fleet's ship stopped trembling, systems stabilized, and the threat diminished. Daniel exhaled, exhausted but relieved. Lyran looked at him, eyes bright with admiration and something deeper, respect, trust, and an understanding that went beyond words. "You were incredible," she said softly. "I never doubted you." He shook his head, smiling faintly. "I had to trust you as well. Without your input, we would have failed." For the first time, he allowed himself a small measure of pride, and the realization that he had not merely survived the danger, but had formed a bond of trust and cooperation that went beyond fear. That evening, the Queen sent for both of them. "You have performed admirably," she said. "Your combined effort prevented disaster, and yet, Daniel, I must ask again, why do you continue to avoid my daughter?" He hesitated, then met her gaze. "I avoid her because I respect her. Because I fear what could happen if I fail her emotionally, if attachment blinds me to reality. I want to protect her in every way I can, and that sometimes means keeping distance." The Queen was silent, considering his words. Then she smiled faintly, a rare expression of approval. "You have wisdom unusual for your species. Perhaps humans are not as simple as we thought." Lyran watched him, a faint smile forming. She no longer seemed frustrated by his caution. Instead, she understood the depth behind it. Together, they had faced danger, survived, and learned to trust one another. Part 2 ends with the anomaly contained temporarily, but its full danger still looming. Daniel and Lyran now share trust and understanding, their bond deepening under the pressure of life-threatening circumstances. The Queen begins to see humans not as fragile outsiders, but as creatures capable of incredible intuition, restraint, and loyalty. Setting the stage for the final confrontation in Part 3, the anomaly pulsed with energy, more unpredictable than ever. The stabilizers they had installed were working, but only barely. Daniel and Princess Lyran stood at the helm of the flagship, watching energy readings spike and drop like waves in a storm. Every second mattered. Every small miscalculation could spell disaster for the fleet and the colonies beyond. Daniel's mind raced. He had spent days analyzing the anomaly, but now, in real time, he had to act faster than any calculation could predict. His hands moved over controls, adjusting energy fields, redirecting power, balancing probabilities with instinct. Lyran mirrored his movements, her violet eyes focused, her posture steady despite the tension. "This is worse than before," Lyran said, her voice calm but firm. "The fluctuations are faster, stronger. We can't rely on stabilizers alone." Daniel shook his head. "No, we need to synchronize directly with the anomaly, feed it energy in a controlled way, but timing has to be perfect. One misstep," he paused, swallowing hard. "We could lose the fleet." Lyran did not flinch. "Then we make it perfect." Daniel's heart quickened. Her confidence was inspiring but terrifying. He respected her strength, yet he could not ignore the danger. This was no longer a simulation or calculation. This was survival, a test of intuition, intelligence, and trust. The anomaly shuddered violently. The entire flagship trembled under the energy surge. Alarms blared, lights flickered. Daniel and Lyran instinctively braced themselves, coordinating adjustments in perfect harmony. Every movement counted. Every decision could tip the balance. "Redirecting energy to the outer field now," Daniel called out. "Lyran, I need you to stabilize the input channels in sequence or it will overload." "I see it," Lyran said, adjusting controls. Her violet skin glowed faintly under the console lights. "The timing is tricky, but I've got it." Minutes felt like hours. The anomaly shifted violently, energy arcs lashing out, threatening to tear through the fleet. Daniel's hands flew over the controls, recalculating, adjusting, guiding. Lyran followed every instruction, adding her insight where human logic and alien experience intersected. Suddenly, a surge struck the main conduit. The stabilizers overloaded. Sparks flew, systems flickered. Daniel's pulse raced. "Lyran, hold the input. Wait now, redirect to auxiliary channel." She reacted instantly, her movements precise. Energy flowed correctly this time, partially stabilizing the anomaly. Both of them breathed hard, adrenaline still pumping. It was temporary, but it bought them a few minutes. Daniel looked at her. "We can do this, Princess, but I need to tell you something. I've avoided you not because I dislike you or think you incapable. I feared becoming attached. Humans form bonds, and I've lost people before because I ignored the consequences of attachment. I couldn't risk it happening to you." Lyran blinked, violet eyes wide. "Attachment? You mean you were avoiding me to protect me?" He nodded. "Yes, and myself. I didn't want my presence to complicate your life, your future. I thought distance would keep you safe. I see now that it does not." Lyran's expression softened. She stepped closer carefully, her voice gentle. "Daniel, you've always protected me, whether you realized it or not. I understand now. Fear does not make you weak, it makes you careful, and your care saved lives today." For the first time, Daniel allowed himself to feel relief, though danger was far from over. The anomaly pulsed again, stronger than ever. He had to act. Together, he and Lyran synchronized energy flows, feeding the anomaly in a delicate pattern designed to dissipate its instability gradually. "Conduit 1 aligned. Conduit 2 synchronized," Daniel called out, coordinating every adjustment. Lyran mirrored his actions, reading the anomaly like a living entity. "Conduits 3 and 4 ready, waiting on your signal." "Now," Daniel said firmly. Energy flowed through the channels, the anomaly responding slowly, trembling as if resisting their efforts. Daniel held his breath, calculating every microsecond, watching the energy readings spike then drop. Lyran's hands moved with precision, matching his timing perfectly. Minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by alarms and the hum of the ship. Then gradually the energy fluctuations began to stabilize. The anomaly's violent pulses diminished, becoming steady. Sparks died down. The fleet's systems returned to normal. They exhaled simultaneously, exhaustion flooding their bodies. Daniel glanced at Lyran. Her eyes shone with relief and something deeper, respect, trust, and an unspoken understanding. He realized they had not only survived but had formed a bond that could not be broken by distance, fear, or duty. Just then, the Queen arrived on the bridge. She observed silently for a moment, her violet gaze sweeping over Daniel and Lyran. "You have done well," she said softly. "The anomaly is contained. Your coordination prevented catastrophe." Daniel bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty." But it would not have been possible without Princess Lyran. The Queen's eyes softened as she studied him. "And yet you continue to avoid her. Tell me why." Daniel hesitated. He had already explained part of it, but now, with the crisis behind them, he could speak freely. "I avoid her because I respect her too much to risk emotional mistakes. I've lost people before when I failed to control attachment or emotion in dangerous situations. I feared that forming a bond with her could complicate her life or my judgment. I wanted to protect her by keeping distance." The Queen was silent, considering his words. Then she tilted her head slightly, a rare expression of admiration crossing her face. "You have wisdom unusual for your species. You act with caution, yet you have courage and loyalty beyond measure. Perhaps humans are not as simple as we believed." Lyran stepped closer to Daniel, her gaze steady. "I understand now. Your caution is not rejection, it is respect, care, and thoughtfulness. That is enough for me. We faced danger together, and I know your intentions were true." Daniel felt relief mixed with pride. The fear that had held him back for so long was finally being acknowledged and understood. He had protected her, guided her, and survived the anomaly while maintaining respect for her position and life. Over the following days, the fleet recovered from the crisis. The anomaly, though contained, was still monitored, but the immediate danger had passed. Daniel and Lyran worked closely, sharing knowledge, insights, and mutual respect. They learned from one another, human intuition complementing alien experience, logic combined with creativity. The Queen observed them often, noting the subtle changes. Daniel no longer avoided her daughter. Lyran had learned patience, understanding, and trust. Their bond was no longer defined by fear or distance, but by cooperation, respect, and shared purpose. One evening, the Queen called them together in her private chamber. "You have both performed admirably," she said. "You survived an anomaly that could have destroyed this sector, and yet, more importantly, you have demonstrated trust, restraint, and collaboration. Daniel, you respected my daughter, even at the cost of your own fear. Lyran, you accepted guidance yet contributed insight and courage. Both of you have grown." Daniel bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only wish to protect her, not to cause concern." The Queen smiled faintly. "Protection is not only about distance, human. It is also about understanding, trust, and action. You have proven your humanity, your strengths, your wisdom, and your courage. And perhaps now you are no longer merely an outsider, but a valued part of this empire." Lyran reached out, lightly touching Daniel's arm. "I trust you, Daniel. You no longer need to avoid me. We face challenges together as partners." Daniel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He nodded, understanding that the bond he had feared could complicate her life had instead strengthened both of them. He realized that human qualities, empathy, intuition, loyalty, had not only saved lives, but earned respect and trust from beings far older and wiser than himself. The Queen observed this exchange quietly, her eyes reflecting pride and admiration. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but their capacity for empathy, restraint, and loyalty made them extraordinary. Daniel's actions, his courage under pressure, and his careful restraint had proven the essence of humanity, their ability to rise, survive, and protect, even in the face of overwhelming danger. The anomaly would be studied, monitored, and prepared for future threats, but the real victory was not just survival. It was recognition. Daniel had demonstrated that humans were capable of incredible reasoning, courage, and moral judgment. Lyran had learned to trust a human's instinct, to see beyond species differences, and to value partnership. Together, they formed a team stronger than either could be alone. As they stood together on the bridge, watching the stars beyond the viewport, Daniel felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. He had faced fear, danger, and personal hesitation. He had respected boundaries, yet acted decisively when needed. He had protected, guided, and collaborated. And now, at last, he had earned trust, respect, and understanding. Princess Lyran's gaze met his, and he saw not only relief but acknowledgement. He no longer needed to fear attachment. Their shared experience, mutual respect, and trust had formed a bond stronger than avoidance could ever prevent. The Queen's voice echoed in his memory, reminding him that humans were capable of extraordinary things, and that he had proven it. The stars outside shimmered, calm after the storm. The fleet was safe, the anomaly contained. And for the first time, Daniel felt that he belonged not just as a human in an alien empire, but as a partner, a protector, and a contributor to a universe larger than himself. And so, the human who had once avoided the princess found himself at the center of trust, respect, and cooperation. His actions had left the Queen speechless, not because of fear or failure, but because of the wisdom, restraint, and courage that only a human could display. Humanity, fragile and unassuming, had shown its strength, and the galaxy had taken notice.